What's up, Street Taz? Eric from the Eric Street Photography blog. So, have you ever been out shooting on the streets and you become super self-conscious of yourself that you feel like everyone's looking at you, you feel like you want to make photos, but you're kind of afraid to because you're going to be afraid that somebody might yell at you, call you a weirdo, or criticize you, or say some sort of crazy stuff to you? These are some practical tips I would give you guys in terms of how to be less self-conscious when you're shooting street photography. I think street photography is all about getting into the zone and losing a sense of yourself, meaning the photos shoot themselves and you're just a vessel that happens to be holding a camera. And the more you forget about yourself, the more you could be open to making images without hesitating. And these are some practical tips. Tip number one, think that they are not your photos. One of the biggest issues that I personally have in my photography is that I get so emotionally attached to my photos and I always refer to them as my photos. And if you detach yourself from the photos you shoot and just kind of refer to them as the photos, not my photos, then you put a lot less pressure on yourself, and also you become a lot less self-conscious when you're shooting the streets because you're just taking photos rather than taking photos to kind of please yourself. Tip number two, don't think when you're shooting. Easier said than done is a lot of street photography, I think about 90% of it is mental, that all the times we want to take photos but we don't shoot photos is that we have some sort of fear or a sense of hesitation of perhaps not getting the shot, disappointing somebody, pissing somebody off, having somebody yell at us. The best way to be a street photographer is essentially be like a pigeon where you just kind of turn off the brain and you're just out making photos. And so I feel one of the best ways to not think when you're out shooting street photography is essentially walk for a long period of time and can kind of get into the zone and try not to use that time to just think about things in your mind. For me, I essentially try to stop stressing my mind and just kind of relax and spend more time observing the street. And the more time I spend observing the street, looking at all the action and trying to make photos, then I don't think so much about myself and I just think of taking images. Tip number three, don't make eye contact. Once you make eye contact with somebody when you're shooting street photography, that's when they notice you and then therefore they start looking at you and then you're like, oh crap, they see me about to take a photo of them, and once again you start to become more self-conscious of yourself. When I'm out shooting street photography and I want to be more low-key and less self-conscious, I try not to make eye contact. So for example, for this photo, I was in Paris, see this guy just looking absolutely miserable in the metro, and I just crouch down, take a photo with a flash like next to his face, and after I've taken the photo, I don't make eye contact and I pretend like I'm looking at the metro link behind him. So by not making eye contact, you're not going to draw as much attention to yourself and you're going to not think about yourself and be less self-conscious. Another practical tip to be less self-conscious is to smile. People are a lot less nervous and afraid of you if you're smiling. The worst you could do is when you're out shooting looking super suspicious and shady. For example, in this photograph, I was in a restaurant with Cindy in Michigan, and on my way to the bathroom, I see this bored couple. I'm like, oh my god, this might be a good photo. And I bring up the camera and I shoot a photo with a flash, and it's really dark. So the second the flash goes off, the couple freaks out and just stares at me. I stare at them, they stare at me back, and I just kind of smile and say, cool place, huh? And I look at the background behind them and they turn around, they say, yeah, it is a cool place. And I just smile and say, have a nice day. And they say, you too. And I walked away. And so when you kind of get into situations where people get angry at you or become upset, just smile and just kind of nod your head or just wave, say thank you, and just kind of move on. Or even when you're out shooting in the streets, like don't do it like obviously super crazy smiley, but kind of go out shooting with, a smile on your face. And when you're shooting, don't be sneaky, I think there's different ways to do it. Of course, the first way I said don't make eye contact, but I feel like the best way to become less self-conscious is just to be friendly and chatting with people on the street. Sometimes you don't want to chat with people on the street, but sometimes you take photos of people, they smile and look at you, then you could go up to them and start talking to them after you've taken their photo, either candidly or with permission. Smiles go a long way. Number five, expect the worst case scenario. Street photography is like driving a car. It's not a matter of if you're going to get into an accident. It's more of a matter of when are you going to get into an accident. And so expect the worst case scenario, because the longer you shoot street photography, the sooner or later you're going to piss somebody off. Someone's going to yell at you, threaten to call the cops, break your camera, etc., etc. I've had a lot of encounters in street photography, let's say. And my suggestion is just kind of expect the worst case scenario, that imagine someone yelling at you or threatening to beat you up, whatever. And so once a negative event actually comes to your way, you're a lot less scared and self-conscious or fearful of that happening. And so once again, always expect the worst case scenario, and therefore when you find the worst case scenario doesn't happen, you're going to be a lot more relieved. And then finally, if something really bad does happen, people aren't going to, you're not going to care as much. And the last tip I have is just remember you're braver than you think. A lot of times in street photography, we think that we're so timid, we're afraid, we don't have the courage to do it. But know that you're a lot braver than you think. And often I use my fear as a way to channel my self-confidence. And for me to become less self-conscious, often I like to just ask for permission, or just kind of tell myself that, and this is like a visualization exercise I do before I'm out shooting street photography. Imagine like I'm putting on like a golden coat of armor that protects me from sort of any sort of fears, anxieties, or people saying mean things to me. And I kind of see the camera like my sword, which makes me feel strong. And the camera isn't something I'm afraid of, but it's something that infuses me with confidence. And so even for this photograph, I'm on downtown LA, maybe like 5 years ago. See this guy, looked really scary to me, it's late at night. And I just approached him and I said, hey, you look pretty badass, I like your tats, do you mind I made a few photos of you? And he just kind of looked at me and said, yeah, sure. And he was super cool about it, took 2 photos with a flash. I must have blinded him. But he ended up being the nicest guy ever. So remember, when you're out shooting street photography, oftentimes the scariest looking people are the friendliest people. And as long as you open up your hearts to other people, you're going to be less self-conscious, less self-aware, and you just like the camera take photos by itself. So hopefully these are some tips that help you guys be a little bit less self-conscious when you're shooting street photography, and just know that at the end of the day, it takes a really long time to build your confidence in street photography, to become less self-aware and self-conscious, and know that street photography is freaking hard, really scary, and you guys are incredibly brave for doing it. So thanks so much for listening. I'm going to enjoy more espresso and get caffeinated. All right, until then, peace out.